You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
This is Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. Mark Thompson is a huge loser. His show, very bad, weak, soft. But if you're interested in crap and you're a communist, you can go to edge-show.com. I don't recommend it.
Hi and welcome. We'll quickly get into things. Michael Shure is here to talk politics, and our guest is the daughter of a very famous, very talented guy named John Cleese. She is Camilla Cleese, and she's talented in her own right as a writer and a comedian. J. Elvis Weinstein, who also has talents on display. He will join for that conversation. Got some email a few weeks ago saying, Mark, like the long episodes where I can kind of kick it for long drives and listen. Well, you'll like this one then. Our conversation with Camilla lasts a while, and Michael Shure's on the front end with some quick insights on what's happening in the very fast-moving world of politics. And, you know, it's not just politics. These are real moves being made by an administration that it would appear to me has interests beyond just what's best for America. But you may disagree, and, you know, honestly, we don't get into that in a very big way. So if you're a Trumpy or if you're coming, we talk about really how the impeachment of Donald Trump is being used as a fundraising tool by the GOP. We touch on that. Bernie Sanders, of course, and his heart attack, and the impeachment hearings. And we wrap it all into like a 12 to 14-minute tasty morsel. Thank you for supporting this show with 5-star reviews. That's the best way you can support us. Yes, financially, of course, if you're going to shop Amazon anyway, do it through our website, edge-show.com. Go on the Amazon link. Anywhere it says Amazon in an episode, that'll take you through to the same Amazon you usually use, but we get a little piece of whatever you spend. Some of you have left us a little something in our virtual tip jar on PayPal. Thank you for that, too. Most of all, thank you for subscribing, for sharing, for being here. And now, let's get started.
This is The Edge.
The advantage, it means.
They let guy just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use for it.
Oh, got it.
We like to talk a little politics, and we do it with a guy who's forgotten more about politics than most of us will ever know. He's Michael Shure! Yes, Michael Shure. Michael Shure.
Your audience is the kindest there is, Mark. The kindest there is.
They're kind and starve for political insight. So let's get right into it. First of all, today, as we're speaking and recording this, Bernie Sanders just had a heart procedure. So he's given up campaigning for, I don't know for how long it'll be, but certainly for the short term, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're saying. And I think it's important, and I sent this out over Twitter earlier, to remember that, you know, when somebody has a successful surgery that like Senator Sanders just had, he's healthier now than he was the day before the surgery. So if he was keeping that crazy schedule with that energy that so many people have grown to admire over the past 5 years, that is going to be even stronger now once he recuperates from this. I don't think he's going anywhere. The campaign announced yesterday that in the third quarter they raised over $25 million. So it is, though, something that people look at. They look at health and they look at age. And I wouldn't say that in the public perception this helps Senator Sanders, and it may help Senator Warren in terms of people moving to her. Hard to say, but his support is so rock solid that I don't see people leaving because he had a procedure.
Well, as you point out, I mean, this is a procedure that a lot of people get who get older. I mean, Clinton's had it. Biden's had 2 of these aneurysms in his brain.
You know, that's the whole idea, is the vulnerability of someone who's older, and that 2 of the 3 are quite old, and when it comes to candidates at the top of the heap right now, and Elizabeth Warren is older than Hillary Clinton was when she ran. So there is certainly a focus on age in this race, but if they nullify that from each other, then it's not as bad then for Senator Sanders.
You mentioned Elizabeth Warren. She got into a real back and forth with big tech in the form of Mark Zuckerberg. You know, she wants to, at least she articulates the desire to break up big tech, and Facebook among those things that would be broken up.
Yeah. First of all, it's fun to say big tech. So in terms of just this story, it's we get to say big tech. But
until you pointed it out, I didn't really realize how much fun it was. But you're right, it is fun.
Right. Okay. You can say it one more time before I answer if you want.
All right.
That's up
all
to
right.
you.
Big tech.
Yeah, but not.
Not over you. Not over you. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Not over.
Big tech.
Here's the thing. Elizabeth Warren is somebody who stokes fear in those who like the power of big anything, whether it be big pharma, big tech, or Wall Street. And this, though, helps her campaign because the people that she's appealing to are not the people who are necessarily sentimental toward the people that run those three certainly big industries and or at the top of the heap in those industries. So while some Democrats are scared that this will ward off a lot of money and that some people who wouldn't ordinarily be inclined to support the Republican candidate will this time because of Elizabeth Warren, it also, I think, is just the kind of publicity that Elizabeth Warren is searching for. I mean, she wants people to understand the people that don't like me are the people that you don't like. So it's playing into her hand on one in one respect, but when she becomes the nominee, it may be a little more complicated.
I'm glad you touched on this because the idea that this thing where she gets into a back and forth and Wall Street hates her and says, this could be end times if Elizabeth Warren is the nominee, and Zuckerberg, same deal, and a lot of big tech, and that is used for fundraising. Similarly, on the Republican side, the impeachment is actually generating tremendous amounts of money for the re-election campaign associated with Donald Trump.
Oh, there's no question. Not just the impeachment. The Republicans do well raising money and protecting what they have, especially when they have a president in office. And again, like Elizabeth Warren, who is using this as an example of why she would be a good choice, Donald Trump is saying, look what they're trying to do to us. Look at the other side. I mean, he's very much about the other. And by using that, it energizes people who want to protect the president, who think that this is, like the president said in the presence of the president of Finland at the White House, he's calling all of this a hoax. They are buying into the fact that this is a hoax, and they want to spend money and on proving that. So it works for, in odd ways. These things have an odd way of working.
A lot of these candidates come to California because that's where the money is. And after they've wrung dry fundraisers on the East Coast or closer to their districts oftentimes, they come west. And Susan Collins is doing a fundraiser in Orange County, California, just south of Los Angeles. And the way they're billing it and the way they're getting people to subscribe to it, to come in and to actually attend, is they're billing it, first of all, as closed to the press. And Susan Collins is the hero, this is a quote, a hero of the Kavanaugh confirmation. So they're playing, right. And so speak to that, because again, you lose track maybe in the bubbles. There is a lot going on that the Republicans are happy with when it comes to Supreme Court nominations and appointments.
No question, and they're much more able to swallow the other things that you have to take with Donald Trump to get their agenda than Democrats are. I mean, the perfect example of that is the Christian Coalition and the conservative evangelical Christians, who hold their nose and bite their tongue and can't stand everything about Donald Trump other than they know that he wants their votes and he will do what they want when it comes to Supreme Court nominations, and that he's done. So that's why people say, oh, he's never going to get the conservative Christian vote. You're damn right he is, because this is what he does when he gets there. They're much better about that. If you look at the Clinton and Sanders dynamic from 2016, if you're a progressive and you like Bernie Sanders, you're much better off with Hillary Clinton than you are with Donald Trump. The Republicans understand that. The Democrats take a little while to understand that, or not at all. And so the other side of the coin is that there are generally Republicans, especially in old Republican areas like Orange County, which is no longer majority Republican but was for so many years. People look at that and they think, this is exactly the type of person we want for our court. We want a conservative. We want someone who's going to protect, a ban on abortion, all of that. And so is going to fight against Roe v. Wade. And so you do please a lot of people. So she is, in fact, a hero. Her vote, if it was the one that changed the Senate, was the one that they love more than any of them. She's got a real race against Sarah Gideon in Maine. Now Sarah Gideon's the Speaker of the House in Maine and a real candidate. But, again, she knows how to raise money. And you talked about California. The number of elected officials who I've interviewed in California or spoken to about California who have said to me, please don't say that I'm in California for this interview. They don't like people to know that they come here because California is really an ATM for so much American politics.
And now to the impeachment. Michael, I've found more and more there are people coming around to my thinking, and I want to see if you are in that category. My thinking is that you may want to
split 8s against a 10. Oh,
you may
sorry.
you may want to focus. You may want to focus on the one incident involving the back and forth with the president of Ukraine. It does seem as though that's an easy sort of shakedown scenario to get your head around. But to limit the impeachment hearings and the impeachment proceedings and those articles of impeachment to just that one incident, I think is a mistake. I would stack it like cordwood to the sky with different impeachable offenses. But I'm curious, A, whether you agree with that, or B, whether you've noticed that a lot of people are coming around to, well, I am a trendsetter when it comes to thought, and people are coming around to that position, I've noticed. Yeah.
They are. Well, I mean, everybody wants to stack cordwood to the sky. And I think that's really what it is. Yeah,
and that's fun to say, just like big tech is fun to say.
Right, but in a much more poetic way. I think that because there is no select committee on impeachment, which could happen, that's something that Speaker Pelosi could do, is appoint a select committee, and she's letting judiciary run with this, and she knows that intelligence and oversight are also working on this. I think that you're not just going to have a limited scope here. I think that there is a cumulative effect to all of the things that they're finding. So it is really kind of a team effort. This happens to have been the thing that catalyzed so many more people, including one of the most important parts of this whole impeachment inquiry is when 7 freshman members of the House who had just been elected in Trump districts, Trump-friendly districts, who were Democrats, came out and wrote a letter. It was an op-ed, I think it was to the Wall Street Journal, or it may have been the Washington Post, saying that they now support an impeachment inquiry. That facilitated so much more because the Speaker wanted to make sure that the entire membership was okay with it, and that the people that were going to have the hardest, her goal is to keep 218, to keep a majority in the House more than anything. She would rather have a majority in the House and Donald Trump than be in the minority and have a Democratic president. And that's her goal here. And so once she realized that she was safe to go ahead with it, she went ahead with it. And I think it's going to come from all sides. I don't think it's going to be just this Ukraine phone call. But I do think you need something that convinces Republicans, not that they have, but that there is something that is a real smoking gun, that is a quid pro quo, that is something that they can point to. The same way the Nixon tapes, when they knew that the tapes were there and they heard the tapes, that convinced the Republicans in Washington at that time that, that actually going ahead with impeachment, that this president broke the law, that he had to go. It's going to take one event like that. So important to keep our eyes on that.
Is the GOP coalition that seems so unshakable around Donald Trump, is it shaking at all?
Not yet. It's, when you had one senator say that 30 people want to vote against Donald Trump, this was off the record, but they can't. They won't do it. They're too afraid to. That means that there's sentiment there. Mitt Romney's the only person who's come out and been aghast at this, the senator from Utah. But it takes a minute, right? It takes something being heard, and it takes a couple of Republicans to say that. The other thing is, as you see these numbers for impeachment in favor, the public being in favor of it, when the public is there, these people don't run toward the person they're protecting. They run toward what the public sentiment is. It's going to take a while, and they have a real coalition, and they need a number of them to flip in order to make a difference. So Mitch McConnell's probably going to allow, should it get to that, going to allow some in his flock to leave the flock, as it were. Who are in safe places or in dangerous places. But also you have to look at Democrats who are running. Joe Manchin, what's he going to do in West Virginia if it gets to this? What's Doug Jones, who's going to be in a tight race in Alabama, going to do? I know Senator Jones a little bit. I think that he cannot bear this president, but he's also running for re-election. There's a lot that has to happen to break up Democrats, but also to break up, and more importantly, Republicans, to have a few of them leave. And if one who is well-respected leaves, then it could become a bit contagious.
Boy, politics is so political, huh?
Yeah, I find that all the time,
Just incredible.
They should rename it.
They should rename it Big Tech is what they should name it.
They should. Yeah. Here's a little bit of news. I'm about to interview Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who has been a vocal supporter of impeachment for a while. She and Al Green and Steve Cohen and Brad Sherman, I think from the very beginning, have been the 4 members of Congress who have called for this. And this has nothing to do with impeachment, Mark. Maxine Waters just told me she, and you'll like this, is now a vegan. Has been for a month.
Wow. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, you better believe it. Everybody.
The audience loves it.
They love. Who doesn't? Oh, good
Who
luck.
Doesn't love that.
Let's check with her next month. Hey,
no, we will. She did say her son is. She's done it for a month. She's giving it till the end of the year, but she's okay with it. The problem is that she doesn't cook, and it's very hard for her because she doesn't cook. She says.
Yeah, I don't really cook either, but you can still do it. Michael Shure, this is the kind of breaking news that's always welcome. And if there's anything else on the edge, so if there's anything else, we will break into this episode with it. But for now, how about it, Michael Shure? Everybody, come on!
Oh, thank you all. That's too kind. The nicest audience in America. All right,
we love you, Michael.
Great.
All right.
Love you. Bye-bye.
If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeartRadio app. Get busy listening.
Comedian and writer Camilla Cleese joins us now. Her father from the legendary comedy troupe Monty Python. She's gone on the road with him as he plays different theaters around the country and around the world. And we pick up the conversation sort of before the show starts formally with her talking about that.
My job is basically to keep him from talking about Trump for as long as possible. Because once he got on that topic, it was like people were leaving and you can't get him to shut up because he loves it when he pisses them off. Like he gives them a round of applause when they get up and start walking out. And I'm just like, I don't care, but like, you want to sell tickets and people leave reviews, and he's not from a generation that like understands that.
No, I mean
that happens.
I'm a Mystery Science Theater guy, and our fans have a lot of that crossover, and there is a faction that just gets mad when you become political.
Right. They're like, you can't bring politics into comedy, and I'm like, why the fuck not?
Yeah, when did that start? Welcome to our big iHeartRadio studio, Camilla Cleese.
Thank you.
You know, Camilla Cleese, to your left is J. Elvis Weinstein, the original voice of Servo on Mystery Science Theater. He's a documentary filmmaker, a comic, a writer. He's written on everything from award shows to...
I'm a showbiz general practitioner.
Yes.
Really, is what I am.
So anything you need during your time with us, during this episode, I want you to know that J. Elvis is here to provide for you whatever you might need.
Great. Could you write me some stuff?
Absolutely. you wouldn't be the first.
Well, Camilla Cleese, you have a famous last name.
I do.
In the world of comedy.
Yes, to some.
You have a very famous dad, John Cleese.
As far as I know. Yes.
Right. And I've already told J. Elvis that I'm going to devote this entire episode to talking about John Cleese. No.
Yay.
I was being your advocate pre-show, I just have to say.
We can talk about him. I love it. I mean, there's endless things to talk about.
Well, that's good.
A very silly human being.
But his life, very well documented.
Well, I don't know about that. Not in the way that Camilla Cleese can document it for us.
Well, I prefer documenting him than myself because, like, even him sleeping is funny. Like the way that he snores, it's unbelievable. I've never heard anything like it.
Did you grow up in America then?
I grew up in London first, but I moved here when I was like, I don't know, 12 maybe. But I learned the accent to piss him off.
Monty Python.
Yes.
They were a transcendentally huge troupe.
Yes.
Comedically. And like just a show business force. And your dad was one of them.
He was.
And so what I'm curious about is, as a kid, did you have a sense of that? Like, wow, we are comedy royalty or show business royalty over here?
Not at all. Because my mom was a actress too. She was in a few movies and did some news reporting. And then my stepbrother's dad was a professional golfer. So I thought everyone's parents were on TV. And it's weird. Like, I didn't really understand what acting was for a surprisingly long time, like till I was a teenager, basically, because you'd see him on camera and stuff and doing all this weird, like my earliest memories are things like him being dangled out of a window by Kevin Kline. On the Fish Called Wanda. Sure, yeah. And having to be escorted off the set because I was like, what are they doing to my dad? Like, that's so mean.
So you really didn't have a sense of this is movie making?
Well, I was 4.
Right.
So it was a little confusing, certainly. But I also didn't want to be a part of the scene where he was in his underwear.
Yeah, right, that is another one.
Still don't. But, he was always coming home in costumes, like dresses and police outfits, and like all my childhood photos, he's like a bat or a priest.
Was his social life made up of people who were also either Python related or comedy related or acting related?
To some degree, but I think less so than you'd imagine. I think his secret desire is to be an academic. So he has a lot of friends who are like top academics in their field. But there's certainly times, like I remember Sean Connery coming to dinner one night, and I was too young to know who he was, but sitting at the top of the stairs, I was supposed to be in bed, just listening to him talk because I thought his voice was so cool. And, he does have some friends in the industry, but he's a little introverted and not a Hollywood, not your typical like celebrity type, aside from the fact that he's used to having everything done for him. Which is where daughters come in real handy.
He had a large career doing industrial and educational films too, which brought out his professorial side.
He's an incredible teacher. I will say that. I was very fortunate to be able to learn and work with him doing comedy. It also got me out of finishing university, which was perfect. Well, because they don't teach comedy. Like, even if you take dramatic arts, they're like, oh, we do Shakespeare. I'm like, that's not really comedy in my book. Like, right. I get that it was funny maybe however many
it's
100
comedy
years
as
ago.
opposed to tragedy.
Right. Like, there's less death, but death can be funny.
Right.
You never know. Like, especially if you're my
if
my
you're
dad.
daughter of a Python.
Yeah. Like, it gets so dark when the two of us are together. It's horrific.
You try to outdark each other?
Basically, yeah.
Did he embrace your decision to become a comic?
No. I mean, not really. I didn't think I wanted to go into it. I was too intimidated because it is a lot to live up to. And I think I probably put even more pressure on myself than anyone else puts on me. But like, I thought I was going to ride horses professionally forever. That's all I did throughout high school and at a very top level. And then he was like, oh, no, I wasn't kidding about you having to go to university. And I was like, oh, okay. And I went and did that.
When you were horseback riding, but just when you were showing horses, that is like a really rarefied world.
Oh, it's a ridiculous little bubble. It's very esoteric and crazy. Like, we were like the poverty line in that sport, if that says anything.
Wow. And you had how many?
And I was very lucky growing up, don't get me wrong. But like, compared to the other kids I was competing against, it was nuts. Like,
how many horses did you guys have?
We had kind of a sales, because like we would import them, and because it makes it a little more affordable, because they were cheaper to buy as young horses in Europe, and you bring them over and train them and compete. Their value goes up astronomically, because here they go for crazy amounts of money.
Stadium jumper or hunter jumper? What were you?
Hunter jumper, but I mostly did equitation as a junior, and also show jumping, like Grand Prix stuff. Yeah.
And equitation is very hard, right? That's that whole, you have to have your manner in the saddle is evaluated, isn't it?
It's like how you ride the horse, and your style and position, but it's still jumping. It's also subjective, which I prefer the show jumping, because it's just, you can't
you knock over a fence and you're done.
Right, exactly. But I did excel at that because they like you to be tall and thin.
Yeah.
And I am.
Right. I did some show jumping.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And I don't know if it's still this way, but it used to be that they don't let you go into the ring with your horse. Okay. This is at least the way it was. But they'll let you walk the ring. Like, you can walk, through. And you can
you pace it out,
and you have to have a guy with coconuts with you.
Do you know how many years I got those as a Christmas present when I asked for a pony?
Come on, that was great. That's so J. funny. Elvis Weinstein. Yeah. But I'm getting to my huge failing and I tell you this quickly, Camilla, because I've really grown attached to you in our little time together. They'll let you walk through it, as you say, to pace it and to understand,
You figure out how many strides are between jumps and, the adjustments you'll have to make.
Sort of strategic aspects to the way it's going to go down. But it's not as though the course is in a certain order that you can just intuitively know. They had this diagram outside, and you had to look at the diagram, and then you walk the course. And the diagram is not the way necessarily you intuitively, as I say, would take the horse, or the way you'd think it through. So you have to memorize. You have to memorize that course, and not in a long time. You don't have a long time to do it. And
sometimes there's two jumps next to each other that face the same direction. And I actually, my last junior year, where the year before I'd come in 5th at the big national championship, so I had a little pressure. Like people thought I could have won. And at the regionals, I was had a beautiful round and jumped the wrong last jump and was disqualified. I have the memory of a goldfish.
I feel better because I must tell you, that's what I was getting to. I couldn't remember the courses. It was by far my biggest challenge.
I just remember landing on the other side of the jump, and normally you get a big round of applause and whooping, and nobody clapped. And I was like, and then I didn't want to come out of the ring because I knew my trainer was going to just...
And these
days, thankfully, they have the Equestrian Ways app.
I do wonder, like, what the technology is since I quit, because when I stopped, it was probably a decade ago, and back then there wasn't any tech. I mean, I had my cell phone I'd ride around with and text people. I was exercising horses, but that was like, ooh.
Yeah, they wouldn't let you take it on there. They're very old school, so it wouldn't be, I'm sure you're not allowed to take anything on, but I just remember them coming over the loudspeaker and, saying, number 53, you're excused. I don't know if they still say you're excused.
You're excused, or, I named one of my horses, and I knew my trainer wasn't going to let this fly, but I named him Naked, so they'd have to say Camilla Cleese riding naked, and everyone would, like, turn around. And he went in without telling me and registered the horse as a different name. Like he was like, you are not going to do that. So.
Yeah.
Change it to Roughshod.
I'm actually really good at...
That's good. Come on, J. Elvis Weinstein.
I'm really good at naming farm animals. It's one of my many talents.
Would you have an expansive farm there in Britain?
Oh, no. This was...
it was over here.
This was in Santa Barbara, yeah.
Santa Barbara. Wow.
You knew that.
I know the Cleese landscape. I was literally. This is a coincidence, but when he texted me the other day saying, "Can you do a show?" and that you were going to be on, I happened to be watching an interview with John Hodgman and your father.
I don't know which one that is. What was it?
From 3-4 years ago.
Oh, no way! So you like my dad?
I do very much. He was the.
Me too.
I'm a huge.
He's all right.
The entire catalog, So,
yeah,
and done a lot of reading and.
He does have a lot of interesting views. I wish I hadn't taught him Twitter personally, but
does he? He gets trolled and trolls back, or what?
He likes he lashes out.
He I think he does more trolling himself, maybe, but it's mostly just like he doesn't understand. I think he thinks it's like mumbling something under his breath to just his friends. And I'm like, no, you have almost 6 million followers. Like, you can't take it back. So the wording is crucial. And just
it's
in this
on
climate.
The record, Dad.
Yeah.
He has 6 million followers.
Well, it's steadily declined, which is hilarious, I think, because he's going to kill me if he hears this. But because he spends most of his time antagonizing the British press. And look, they are awful. They're the scum of the earth. But it doesn't help to antagonize them. Like, and I wish I'd thought about that before I said I'd go do Edinburgh, because I'm like, oh Jesus, like there is no winning here. You know?
That's their revenge, is to come after you.
Well, they're out for blood. Like he found out like what their real names are, because all the Daily Mail people use fake names when they write, because they are the scum of the earth and they don't want to, get stabbed or hit with one of those bobby clubs. They don't really have guns there, I guess. But
because Daily Mail does so much sort of incendiary stuff, celebrity stuff.
They've tried to start shit with. Sorry, can I swear?
You can say. Yeah,
okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
They've tried to start stuff with you guys?
Between us all the time. They try to like drive a wedge. I was in Switzerland. I was supposed to do a TED Talk, which is a whole nother story. Wow. I did a TED silence in the end because they tried to make me be politically correct, and to a point that was so ridiculous that, okay, never mind.
No, hang on a second. Let's just digress there and I'll get you back to where you were. So you're asked to do a TED Talk to talk about anything you want, or is it some particular thing?
Well, they asked me to do comedy and I was like, are you sure? Because, like my stuff, it can be a little dark or edgy, whatever. But like I'd run all my material by them via Skype before I flew to Switzerland, and they seemed to love it. And I get there and I get off the flight, and I took an overnight flight, and it's the morning and I'm exhausted, and we go to the venue first, and they're like, do you mind running through your act? And I'm like, I'll do it for time, but I'm in this huge convention hall theater thing, and there's like 9 people. So how awesome that goes. Like, even if one person's laughing, you're not going to hear it. So I was like, I'll run it for time, but I'm not going to like perform it. They're like, that's fine. So I ran it And I could see him whispering a little bit. And I came off stage and they were like, yeah, we're going to need you to cut this and this and this and this. And like literally 70% of my act, they're like, you can't do that. And like, just as an example of the things they said were offensive, because this is ridiculous. Like one joke that I did, I'm 6'1", so I get the stupidest comments from strangers all the time. And I do a joke about like this creepy drunk guy coming up to me and being like, damn girl, you're really tall. And I'm like, not for a man, which works better when I'm not losing my voice. But they said that was offensive to trans people.
Wow.
Like, what? And then I had a great joke about Oscar Pistorius, and they said I couldn't make fun of him because he's disabled. I'm like, yeah, but he's also a murderer. Like,
yeah,
I feel like you waive your right to being safe from jokes when you kill someone.
You're no longer protected once you've slaughtered someone. Yeah.
And a women's rights thing where, like, it's so obvious I'm being ironic because I'm, like, talking about how into women's rights I am, and I think it's really important to fight for my right to stay at home and not work. And, like, I'm working while I'm saying this. Like, can you not see the irony here? They said I couldn't do that. Like, of it just... And I
so you ended up canceling it or what?
I said, hey, look, I called my dad and I was really upset because I really wanted to do it, but I didn't. I could have done a different 20 minutes that was squeaky clean, but it wouldn't represent who I was. Right. And if it was going to get a lot of attention, I didn't want to put that out there, like a scrambled attempt at like.
Didn't Sarah Silverman run into a shitstorm with a TED
Talk?
And
I wish I'd known that beforehand. I saw the thing she did with Bill Maher. Like they were terrible to her. And it's so hypocritical, I think, because they're a company that's all about like forward thinking and spreading new ideas. Right. And here they are censoring us. Like, don't ask comics to do your stuff if like you can't handle it.
Yeah, at least not to
like
do
if
their
you invite
set.
Sarah Silverman on, like, what do you expect?
Sure.
Right.
She's amazing, but like she's dark.
Not
like,
only what do you expect, but what do you want?
Right. Like, what's the point?
Right.
Like, and they totally denounced her and said, you know, she said some not nice things, like the head of the TED Talks thing. And I just, yeah. So I called my dad and I was like, what should I do? He was like, don't you dare do it. And thank God, because I felt like I should have done it. But he's like, you have to stand up for what you believe in.
No, you can't have them
be
pull
true
the rug
to yourself.
out under you like that at the last minute.
No, it was
not for a TED Talk.
No,
you know?
No.
So you end up in Switzerland then with no TED Talk?
And then I flew home.
Oh, you did.
It was the worst 48 hours, like of just
wow.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
You have a TED Talk story, Jay Elvis?
I don't.
You don't. You've never been asked, have you?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I mean, the only reason I
taught a master class once, though.
Oh, that's cool.
That's more impressive because you got to actually talk, didn't you?
That's true, I did. And no one told me I couldn't say anything.
Right.
Yeah.
You were in charge.
That's right.
Now, I told you that I'd get you back to what we were talking about because that was just a digression.
Yes, it was.
And normally I'm very good at getting you back to where you're.
I can't remember what we were talking about.
Yeah. And now I literally can't. This is the first time this has happened, too. Usually I'm really pretty good.
I was impressed when you said you'd be able to.
Oh, no. And
honest.
I tell you, I said it fully confident that I would be able to do it. And now I've.
I lost it, too. But
okay.
I had faith in you.
Was it? We were talking about. No.
We're talking about.
Are there any listeners? Oh, no, we're not live, are we?
If there are any listeners who could call us in a month.
I bet we could get something else rolling. I bet we could get some other thing rolling. I really
what else
between
is
the
there?
I'm not worried about it. So at what age did you come here to the States then? I'm just trying to get the timeline of your life.
Maybe 11 or 12, but then my dad was still in the UK, so I would go back for the summers for 3 months, and I did a lot of back and forth, which is really fun because this is back when planes didn't have like entertainment systems.
Oh, so you're
kid,
being facetious.
Like,
it was awful, huh?
Oh, it was
because you're going a long way.
There wasn't even Game Boy, and like people could smoke on plane. Like I would just sit there and want to kill myself at 8 years old, or no, 11 years old, whatever it was.
Were you the unattended minor?
Yeah, the unaccompanied minor, and you had to be the first one on the plane and the last one off because they, you know, I'll never forget. Once I was flying to meet him in I think it was Barbados, and when I walked through there, this customs guy, I know he was kidding, but you don't kid around with an unaccompanied minor like this. He was like, welcome to Cuba. And I was supposed to be in Barbados, and I just burst into tears. And they're like, what is wrong with you? Like,
oh my God.
It's not something that a child is going to find
You've
funny.
been punked.
I was, great. I'm in a scary country where I have no family, and
oh my God.
I'm not old enough to check into a hotel.
So does John Cleese pick you up at the airport, or does he send someone to pick you up?
No, it depends, but normally if the airport is nearby and I'm fine if he sends someone else because his driving is terrifying.
Yeah.
He doesn't check his blind spots because it hurts his neck, which I'm like, what would hurt your neck more is if you get T-boned because, there's someone in the lane where you're moving into it. But anyway, no, he does normally come pick me up. We're super close and always happen. But we show affection.
Curious. I'm just trying to gauge lifestyle more than actual.
Yeah, we're
affection.
trying to get a sense for
pretty you'd be surprised. He lives on the whole like a very
down to earth.
Yeah, he's for someone that's been famous for that long.
It seems like he's had both anecdotally and just from outside, it seems like he's had wildly varying amounts of wealth over the years too.
Well, yeah, that's because he gets married once a week.
Well, 50 years of show business,
doesn't
and 4
cover
marriages
his
or whatever.
bases. Yeah, and also back then when he did most of his most famous works, you didn't produce them yourself, so he doesn't have the rights to most of the stuff he did, which is crazy to think about. But like A Fish Called Wanda, which was his baby. I mean, he wrote it and sort of, I think, kind of directed with the director and starred in it and has no say over what he can do with it.
That's astounding. And at that point in his career, you kind of assume that he's going to have a lot of show business leverage, negotiating leverage.
Oh, you'd be amazed. I mean,
does he own Fawlty Towers?
He has the rights to, to some degree, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is amazing, actually, and this infuriates me. There's a company that's been doing a Fawlty Towers production with, at first it was unbeknownst to him, but it's been going on for something like 12 years. They call it the Fawlty Towers Dining Experience. It has nothing to do with my dad. He's never seen a penny.
Wow, unlicensed.
And they have made millions off of this thing. And somehow, I think they've tried to sue them now just recently because he wanted to turn it into a stage show. And they did in Australia, but it suffered because so many of the fans had already seen this other show and they didn't realize that it was unauthorized.
Oh, my God.
And when they tried to sue this company that's been blatantly ripping him off for this many years, they countersued for something ridiculous. I mean, that's how crazy the legal systems are. But they said that they weren't using any of the script, which we found out was untrue because someone went to the thing, and I probably can't say any more than that. But it was funny. When we were in Edinburgh, he came up for a day while I was there this past year.
That's a comedy festival in Edinburgh?
Yeah. It's the biggest one in the world, probably. And we did a charity event together, just an interview where we offended the shit out of everyone. But it was fun.
That's where you.
But we were gonna go to the Fawlty Towers Dining Experience,
that would have been
just
great.
because it would have been so uncomfortable. But we were both sick and we just couldn't pull it together. But that would have been an epic.
Absolutely right. Oh,
that takes a lot of energy to smirk.
Can you imagine
for
Basil, the guy playing Basil Fawlty, coming up to him and being like, "Oh," you wouldn't want to be doing that.
But in the Monty Python, all that Monty Python stuff, you're saying that was kind of work for hire? No, they had rights to all that, didn't they?
I mean, I think they own a percentage of it, but I think the BBC owns a lot of it too.
And you're saying through the years,
I know what they got paid to do those things initially, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. It's not the big
I think
money
they made
that we think.
£2,000 a week or something, or no, an episode maybe, or
either way, it's awful.
That might be wrong.
Yeah.
On Holy Grail, they had to share rooms.
Are you kidding?
No.
Isn't that surprising?
Well, that's why they had the coconuts.
The coconuts saved the whole movie.
They couldn't afford horses.
Right, that gag basically saved the budget of the movie.
It is interesting, though, how sometimes the lack of budget can cause this creativity,
Wait a minute. The coconut, let's get
that coconut gag.
Hang on a second.
Michael Palin came up with it because they could not afford horses.
Explain this visual. There is a bobbing ahead over. It's clearly a horse. I think this is the way I remember.
Each knight travels with his squire, who, as they're sort of miming, galloping through the countryside on foot, their own feet. He mimes the sound of horses clocking behind them.
Yeah.
But isn't the first reveal? Is the first reveal like as we see it over a horizon or something? I thought I remember.
I think you hear the noise or something, and then they widen out.
Okay.
You hear the noise and you see the knight, and then they widen out to reveal.
That's brilliant, but I had no idea. So you're saying that was born
Think of how many thousands of dollars of horse wrangling if you have that joke for everything that represents a horse scene. You know?
Yeah. I mean, their budgets were nothing compared to what came in. I don't know if you guys know. Well, the first one I think was The Holy Grail was produced by, and it's so funny, my dad knows nothing about music. You ask him what his favorite genre of music is, and he'll say silence. So he couldn't remember the names of the bands, but I think it was like Pink Floyd and like someone else huge that financed the first one. And then the second one.
Harrison did Life of Brian, right? Harrison was Life of Brian.
George Harrison financed Life of Brian because none of the studios would touch it. I think in part because it was about religion. But my dad tells a great story about apparently Eric Idle knew him and sent him the script, and he called him and George was like, I want to make the movie. And they're like, why? And he's like, because I want to see it. Like, he mortgaged his house so that they could make it. And wise call on his part, because he must have made a fortune off of it.
Yeah.
Because the budget was like 300, I think, thousand, not million.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
I think I remember
that.
like $1 million.
But, I mean,
well, maybe dollars, but it was like, yeah.
But even allowing for inflation,
and then
that's
he
cheap.
produced, and then Handmade Films did Gilliam's, did like Time Bandits and others.
Yeah, I mean the budget was nothing, and no one would give them the money except George. So, thank you, George.
Great story in the lore for sure.
Because that's my favorite of the films, I think.
Was that the biggest? What was the one that was the most popular? Would you say of all of them?
Of the Monty Python films?
Yeah, the Monty Python.
I think The Holy Grail is better known.
Right.
But Life of Brian
is a greater piece of art.
Yeah, because of its commentary on religion, I think, is really the best part, and not just one religion.
Wall smart, really.
Yeah, there's so much kind of subtlety that you miss the first time you watch it, but like each time you see it, you pick up on more stuff. I mean, the first time I saw it, I was 6, and I loved it because there's just funny, like, ridiculousness in it. But there is a lot of really sort of under the radar, intelligent stuff going on, and it makes a very valid point about organized religion. But there's a hilarious video on YouTube of my dad and Michael on some talk show a million years ago with 2 men of the cloth debating why it's a problem.
It's great.
They hate it. Have you seen it?
I've seen it. Yeah, my wife teaches. My wife is a college professor, and I just gave her a clip from that show to show to her class because she's teaching a book called Lamb, which is another sort of satirical Jesus myth.
Yeah, because the men of the church were saying that that like 14-year-olds might take it as a documentary, and it was so detrimental. Right. And the funny part was one seemed just flaming gay. Do you know who I'm talking about? Yeah. And like my dad is
seeing
very
Palin that stern was really
I love
cool.
Palin. I mean, I think he is the most under celebrated of the Pythons because like the coolest thing for me, I wasn't born when that stuff happened. So they did a reunion show at the O2 in London. Mm-hmm. I think it was like 2014, 13 maybe, 14. And I got to go see like them do all this stuff without Graham, which was sad because I thought he was an incredible talent.
Did you meet him ever?
I'm sure I did, but he passed when I was like 4. And that's actually another hilarious thing on YouTube is the eulogy my dad did. Yeah, have you ever seen that?
Yeah. No,
it's amazing.
I'm kind of a Python nerd now that I think of it. I'm not like go around quoting an accent.
But like there's
nerd,
so much
I've
interesting stuff that's not actually stuff that was ever broadcast. But like my dad gave the most inappropriate eulogy, to other people, but like he had everyone laughing and crying at the same time, which is such a beautiful thing. And it is what Graham would have wanted. And he says, like, he would never forgive me if I didn't take this opportunity to use poor taste in a situation like this. So,
well, they did the thing with the urn at Aspen too.
Oh yeah, that was great. That's like one of my favorites.
They had what was ostensibly Graham's ashes. They did a reunion.
They stuck his face on it.
Yeah, they had this urn on the table, and then inevitably, I don't remember how deep into the show, but it gets kicked over, and this beautiful cloud of ash dust
goes everywhere, and they try to act like it's no big deal, and someone brings out a dirt devil, and they're vacuuming him up. Yes. I think my dad goes over and tastes the ashes, and like it's just so wrong. But I love that about them, that they weren't afraid at all. And my dad, he's never given any fucks. He's gotten to the point where if you give no fucks, it's hard to give less fucks than that, but he does. And it's a little scary because.
And they feel sort of, they were always sort of they were counterculture comics, it seemed, or a counterculture company, So the stories that you tell make sense. They're consistent with the way we think of Monty Python. In other words, if they were going the other way with it, if they were too maudlin, or it almost wouldn't feel like it was them, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that they push the boundaries because it sort of paved the way for a lot of other people to do it. But the climate right now is just absurd, as I'm sure you've struggled. But you can't say anything without everyone getting in an uproar, especially on social media. And the scary thing about social media is I think Jim Jeffries said this in one of his specials, and he's great at this, but part of the art of being a comic is saying fucked up things and remaining likable, because the tone of voice is so crucial to it. So when you print things, people don't always get it. It's also why a lot of my relationships end via text message, because sarcasm doesn't read well, and I don't punctuate, which totally changes the meaning of things sometimes. But it is interesting to see because you leave out one comma and it can, it's probably why there's wars over the Bible,
Well, yeah, the translations alone on the Bible are going to leave you in a totally different place.
What I really love about your dad and those guys is as opposed to the rock stars of their same generation who did sort of recede back to Britishness as they got elder, and Keith Richards goes through old ship logs, and your father seems to have kept had both Americanized, for lack of a better word, and stayed young in his irreverence.
He's definitely stayed young in his irreverence.
He seems to also embrace being a cranky old man at this point.
He does. His public persona is definitely, it's hilarious. If people say, "Oh, you're a legend," he's like, "I know." And I'm like, or he'll say, "I'm not, I'm an icon." But it's fun. That's why I enjoy doing the interviews with him, because our relationship, we show affection by just roasting each other. And it gets to the point where I get things thrown at me. I get glasses of water, and I think the audience enjoys it if they're not uncomfortable, which occasionally happens.
Sounds terrific though. But, so you're on stage and you kind of interview your dad, or how does it work?
The audience, so he shows a movie first usually, which is, or it has been the Holy Grail recently. And then the audience has a chance to write questions on note cards. And I have to go through about 400 note cards while the movie plays, and then go on stage and pick the best questions.
So John's working real hard. As you can see.
He rolls in at 8:30 or an hour and 15 minutes in. He's earned it for sure.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, he's so funny just off the cuff. There's not a lot of people that could do that.
Sure.
I'm not going to lie. We get a lot of the same questions, and I might know a lot of his material and jokes. So I know what questions will have funny answers. You wouldn't believe the number of questions I get, what's the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow or whatever. And I'm I'm not going to ask that because A, we don't know.
Right.
And B, it's not a funny answer. And I know they think they're being funny by writing that, but also, will you do the silly walk? Have you seen him? It's not going to happen. He's had 2 hip replacements.
He didn't want to do the silly walk when he was of age.
No, I know. He had to train. I had to train to do them in one show, and it's hard. Those things, they take a lot of skill. You'd be amazed.
And so when do you guys do that? Is that a tour that you guys do occasionally, or festivals sometimes?
It usually, historically, it's been a tour where we'll go and do 15 cities on in
wow.
18 days, and I live on a bus with him. Well, he has a hotel room whenever we pull in, but it's interesting. I'll say that much.
That feels like a documentary waiting to happen.
They should document that just because it's hilarious. I mean, our tour family now, like the tour manager is amazing and the tech guy and the bus driver, and we all just talk shit to each other all day long and mess with each other. My dad always has the thermostat set to 82 when we're on the bus, which is
oh, wow.
Which I don't understand how he could be cold. And like, could we compromise? Like, you put on a sweater and we turn it down to 78. And he'll be like, whose tour is this? And I'm like... You know,
well, he has you there.
And he is one of the messiest people I've ever encountered, and I'm a germaphobe. So I spend the whole time in rubber gloves, like picking up things.
Jay Elvis, this could be your third documentary, the Cleese tour.
You'd fit in well with the crew, I feel like. Yeah.
You know that I would be so fucking on board for that.
Yeah, that's something that you could...
Actually, we do have one spare bunk because he gets the back third of the bus, so he has like a queen-size bed and his own bathroom, and then my room's a strong word. It's a hallway that I share with 3 grown men, and in my little coffin-sized bunk with my dog and one of my suitcases because I'm a girl and I have too many suitcases, and I barely fit in it. It's actually cozy to
I ruined one of my roadie friends' careers simply by referring to it as "you sleep on a shelf."
That's so true.
And it got in a weird way, and it kind of made him get out of the business.
It's amazing though, because these curtains, like, you have no privacy, and sharing it with these dudes, it's like I have to try and change my pants, like in this little tiny.
Oh yeah.
You know, in my shelf that's got another shelf right above it.
How old is your dad now?
79.
79.
He's a maniac. I don't know how he still tours like that because I get exhausted. Like it's exhausting being on the road. I'm sure you've done plenty of it. It's like just the constant. I think it's easier as a dude, but as a girl, the packing and unpacking and all the bells and whistles that were required to like makeup and hair.
Make it happen.
Yeah. So, it's not like I have a glam squad traveling with me by any means. I have to make sure that my dad looks presentable too. So that's not always easy because he's usually, he'll be resting and I'm like, you have to change your shirt. And he's like, no. And I'm like, but that one has a stain on it. I don't care. Please. Like, it just is. Because he really doesn't care, and he wears the same thing every day. He will not wear socks.
He's
ever.
79,
Refuses.
and he's a legend. So
he's allowed to do it. But I'm the only one that ever tells him he can't do something. So he's like, well, no one else says that. And I'm like, yeah, because you're John Cleese, and everyone else is like intimidated, and I'm not.
You mentioned before that he's been married a few times. How many times has he been married?
He's on number 4.
Number 4.
Yeah.
And so you were from his second marriage, it would be?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he actually titled one of his tours. I only remember this because he was on a talk
Alimony
show.
Tour.
The Alimony Tour, right.
Which was some of the funniest stuff that ever. I helped a little bit write it, and then a great writer named Matt Harowitz helped. It was initially, I think, for Just for Laughs, but it was so cleverly done because you have to be careful of defamation suits and stuff. But everything that was said was just based on numbers and facts. But it was like, we basically took his divorce settlement and figured out how much money she made for every hour that she was married to him. And then it was like, she'd wake up after a good night's sleep with however much money on the bedside table. I think it was like 1,200 pounds on the bedside table. Like every time she went to the bathroom, it was like another 100. And then we went through and figured out how many times he could have married other celebrities and divorced them for the same divorce settlement. Like I know Pamela Anderson, it was 3.3 times, and Bridget Nielsen was like 1.6. And then we went through and...
At least he wasn't bitter.
Yeah, right. He used to say it would have been cheaper to have her killed.
That was the marriage after the one to your mom, right?
Yeah. That was number 3.
Did you ever meet Connie Booth, number 1?
Yeah, I've met Connie a few times. My sister is from Connie Booth.
Oh, okay.
Who was Polly in Fawlty Towers.
Oh.
Yeah. She lives here too.
That's interesting.
She's 13 years older and a foot shorter.
Wow.
Somehow.
He gets along with everybody now, or no? I guess wife number 3 after the Alimony Tour probably doesn't speak to her too much.
No.
Yeah.
No, that did not go over well. Well, she also really fucked him. Like she hired the nastiest lawyer and went for the jugular. And like at the time, the divorce laws here are insane. Like I'm sure you guys have heard, but like it's basically if you marry someone super wealthy, stop working and start spending a lot of their money, you get rewarded.
Right.
Like,
you have a lifestyle to protect now.
Right. And she was claiming that they hung out in castles with dignitaries, and like he doesn't like that shit. Like that's not the truth. But it also happened, they calculate alimony, I believe, on like the previous 3 years of work divided in 2. And it happened to be his 3 biggest years ever. So then he had to keep up with that for another 8 years or however long the alimony, because he had like Shrek, which, you know, that's a great gig because voiceover, even if you're doing a lead role, it's 2 days work and you get paid for a lead role. So it's like, so it was absurd what she got in that settlement. And he was like, I'll never get married again. And then about 2 years later, here we go.
Well, the heart wants what it wants. But you'd think that he would get a prenup or something, a guy in such a high-profile position. But I guess that's just one of those things where sometimes...
Well, he did have one, but I think there was something about him getting married in the West Indies or something that it didn't hold up as well.
They found a way to
So guess
get
where
around.
he got married this time? The West Indies. And it's funny because he used to always quote he'd say the quote, the definition of insanity is repeating the same behavior over and over, expecting different results. And now I quote that more often than he does.
But he's still happily married now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's that. How long have they been together now?
Well, I don't know exactly. I think they got married in 2014 or so, probably.
No.
13 maybe.
No.
You were just making the jury still out noises.
No, I was just trying to figure. No, it's a nice amount of time.
Well, I normally can remember. Actually, this is super dark, but my mom didn't approve of number 4 because there's a big age difference. And she died on their first wedding anniversary.
Oh my God.
Which it's a great way to ruin someone's anniversary. I mean, she had a darker sense of humor than my dad did. And like, we knew she was going to pass away. So it was just a question of when, and they'd given a time frame, and she actually managed to like outlive the time frame, I think, just to ruin their anniversary. And I know it's really messed up, but like, I know she's up there smiling about it.
Did your dad have a type? Like when you look at the people that he ended up marrying? Like,
they're all the same.
What are they?
They're all like blonde, thin, tall.
They're all you.
Well, that's the current one is 6 foot and blonde, and that's awesome because they keep running photos of my dad and I, and with the caption, you know, John Cleese and his wife, and I'm like, I don't know what's worse, the fact they think I'm banging my dad or the fact they think I'm 42, but.
Sort of an Ivana Cleese situation.
It is.
Where the types
but it's
are
like
a lot of crossover.
But there's a lot less reciprocation on my end than and I don't show up in inappropriate situations. Like, I let him go to meetings by himself when it's with important people.
Right.
I feel like I've got a pretty good idea of John Cleese now from this conversation.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious about you. And like, how did you
start?
God. Yeah, it won't last.
I'm kidding.
It won't last.
I'm kidding.
No, but I wonder, like, so you left whatever fabulous Santa Barbara compound you grew up in, and did you have to like then set up your own thing? Did they hook you up with some money? Did you set up in Hollywood, New York? I don't know anything about you, and I'm curious.
Gosh, the chronology, I get confused because I moved around so much, and I did some modeling in New York, and I was still riding at a top level, competing and traveling the country, and then went to university. And I wound up sort of, I think the first thing I did entertainment industry wise, other than the modeling, was my dad was writing a one-man show to do in New Zealand, to tour for 4 months. And he asked me to write it with him, which I think we both thought meant make coffee and type, because he doesn't know how to type. Except with 2 fingers, which to this day he does. And I'm like, do you want me to just type that for you? Like, he hand wrote his autobiography.
Wow.
Can you imagine? Wow. He'd be like, I wrote 800 words today. I'm like, if you'd let me type, we could quadruple that at least. Like, but he's old school. He doesn't like technology. And I get it, because it, like, my phone, I sometimes hate, but
I still like jokes with a pen better.
I write better jokes with a pen. That's true. Like, because sometimes I type too fast and then my fingers get ahead of my brain and I can't remember what I was going to say, or there's some like disconnect. I don't know. But when you're writing that much, like how bad would your hand hurt? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, longhand prose I'm not in for.
Right. But I wound up contributing, I think, more than either of us anticipated. And I managed to write my way into the show so that I didn't have to go back to school. I was like, we need a 6-foot blonde in this. Like, we really do. And then I managed to write my best friend into a show and a hot guy who we cast over there. But it was a really fun production. I didn't have a huge part in it, but I wound up touring with him in New Zealand, and that's kind of where I got the bug. And then I started writing on more projects with him and sort of learning a lot of different stuff. And then moved to LA and was working for a media company for a little bit and doing sketch and taking acting classes. And I always thought I would just be a comedy writer because, I don't know, it never really occurred to me that I could do stand-up. But I was in a sketch group with a girl named Sarah Tiana, who... Do you know Sarah?
I don't.
She's hilarious. Definitely check her out if you haven't seen her stuff. She recently just had a Comedy Central special, I think. But I saw her do stand-up and I was like, oh my God, like she's someone that's like me, like that I'm friends with, that I can relate to. Because the only female comics I'd seen were sort of cartoon character-y, if that makes sense. Like the only ones I was familiar with were like, you know, these sort of over the top, like Margaret Cho's and Roseanne Barr, like and I guess because I didn't connect to them, I didn't think I could do it. So I finally took the plunge and it was terrifying. And then I fell in love with it and it ruined my life.
It'll do
like
it.
It does.
Sure.
I actually like my life better now, but it just went on a totally different trajectory. And it's great as a writer because even if I'm writing something completely unrelated to my stand-up, I can sometimes test out jokes, like weave it into my act. And I love being able to get the immediate feedback. You don't have to wait to shoot it and edit it and, you know, to see if it works. And no one else can mess it up along the way. You also can't blame anyone else if it doesn't go well, which I miss.
There's still the audience. Come on.
Only if you're at the Comedy Store, though. That's like
It's a tough business. I mean, your dad did something with Monty Python in those years following, you know, the troupe on television that was collaborative. He worked with other people and you created a phenomenon, incredible moments and entertainment and all the rest. And that's so insanely successful. And as we say, he is a comic icon and legend. But in a way, being on that stage as a stand-up alone, I have such enormous...
Much scarier.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of the point I'm making.
Well, you have nothing to hide behind. No script, no character, no props. No, like it's just you. So you're vulnerable. You're being judged by a room full of strangers on a nightly basis.
I mean, if he was in a project that didn't work, a reviewer might say, well, they misused John Cleese in this scene because he should have been blah, 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 or this film didn't maximize Cleese's abilities or blah, blah, blah. But if you're on stage... We know you wrote this, or you decided that this is the material you're going to go for,
right?
And so there's no one to.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're reading someone else's monologue on stage, you're still just as on the hook, really. You know,
well,
right? No, that's kind of my
in your soul.
But it's not
different.
really stand up though. Like it.
No,
I feel like stand up.
But I've written
so,
acts for people.
I'm sure you have, but that's what's interesting to me. Like I have a hard time. I could never do stuff that other people wrote for me because I'd feel like a fraud, and I feel like somehow people would know. So
well, I mean that's.
But that's
a good writer will also collaborate and go, so it is your voice and you are comfortable with it. So.
I mean, when I first started, I was writing in my dad's voice still, which was hilarious because I'm like, I'm not going to say indeed there. Like, what? That's crazy. But like, and I was so used to being so dark and thinking in sort of a British way. And I do have quite a British sense of humor, but like.
And what is a British sense of humor?
I think it's a little darker, drier, a little more cerebral in general, and more subtle. Like you're not telling people when to laugh necessarily. Well, would you add anything to that? Because I'm not sure I'm describing it the best, but
it's often politely unkind.
Yeah, very self-deprecating too. I think on the whole, you see more of that, but not in a way that makes people uncomfortable. Like
it has to be self-deprecating because British people have no tolerance for boasting.
It's so true. Yeah, that's why Dane Cook never made it over there.
Right. Well, I'm looking forward, Josh, to you writing me an act.
I've offered that before.
He has offered it.
I'll pay you residuals.
All right.
You know what I get paid. It's not much.
Regardless, if someone calls me and needs a joke, I will always help.
No, I do. Like, if there's a headliner that I think is a great writer and then I love to get help. Like, if I can't quite make something work, but I know that it's there and I've been trying and I can't, like, it's great to get feedback, or if they give me a tag or something, but like, I just can't imagine doing stuff. Like, there's a lot of actors that are starting to do stand-up now, or social media stars, and they're headlining clubs, and like, they can't do 5 minutes, and it's like...
And that's someone I wouldn't write for.
No, thank you. I apappreciate that you wouldn't, because
I'm not as
a comic, it's pretty frustrating to lose your spots.
I have no Pygmalion Jones, really.
Right. Because even if you're the best actor in the world, it's like, stand-up is a different animal. You can't just fake it. Like, you can't, because you have to be able to go off script and improvise and deal with situations. Like, if a waitress drops a tray of drinks and the whole room gets uncomfortable, or the microphone breaks, or whatever. There's just so many variables beyond your control. And you can't blame anyone else if it goes wrong. So
is your life now, is it the comedy club life? I mean, does that make up the lion's share, or what is it about now?
I do a lot of writing. Like, I wrote a pilot based on my life with my dad, which I think is the best thing I've written. I thought it was really funny. I mean, I did write it, but like,
unfortunately, he's too expensive.
He was willing to do it for super cheap, but it's a funny premise, and it kind of happened. It was basically when I was about 2 years sober, trying to establish my career and myself as a separate entity and escape his shadow. And I was living with my two best friends, renting a house from him for a very generous discount, friends and family discount. He was living in Santa Barbara with his wife, and basically shows up on our doorstep and says, "I'm getting a divorce and coming to live with you guys," and just takes over, all of our lives.
That's great. What happened to that?
We pitched a few places, and one place he completely sabotaged the pitch, which
I would love to have watched.
It was actually like an episode out of the show.
Josh, you had another documentary you could have been doing.
Like, he literally spent the first 11 minutes of the pitch telling the TV executives anecdotes about how TV executives have no idea what they're doing and fucked up all his projects.
Watch John Cleese suffer fools. Not gladly.
I mean, I had my head down on the table just to try and be funny about it. And every once in a while I'd pop back up and be like, "Can I pitch the show now?" Like, what?
Wow.
But a lot of it is stuff like that. Me auditioning to play the part of his daughter in a movie, and they tell me I'm not right for the part, and he agrees. And I'm like, "What the fuck do you mean I'm not right to be your daughter?" Like, and then he starts auditioning people that would be like his daughter. And it would be all the people that have played his daughter and stuff, like Lucy Liu. Like, what? But it's tough, to sell a show that's based in the entertainment industry. There's a bit of a stigma with that, it's strange to me that still exists when you see how many successful shows there have been like that. But I kind of get that. But now there's some people that may want to independently finance the pilot and go a different route, and we'll see. I'm holding out hope, because I do think it's original and funny, and my dad loved it. Like, he actually, it's probably the only thing I've written that he didn't try to completely rewrite. So I'm
sure it's strange now, because generationally you are going in to pitch to executives who don't even know to be reverent to John Cleese at this point, I imagine. Not all of them, for sure, but...
Or the comedy executives don't know, really?
I think most of them do know him, but I think the thing is, now there's just so much, there's so many huge celebrities doing TV. Like, they're passing on huge A-listers attached to shows.
Yeah.
But I also haven't read those scripts. And this is also a super cheap show to make. It's not like there's any special effects. It's like us at a house, maybe going to the grocery store, and my dad in a bathrobe being a dick.
That's great, though. It almost feels Python-y, or just like your dad's personality consistent.
And I think it is relatable, because everyone goes through that dynamic shift with their parents as an adult, where you kind of start parenting the parent, but the celebrity aspect exacerbates that, because, as I'm sure you guys have met a few celebrities, they don't. And look, my dad works so hard that he doesn't have to do everyday stuff, but he doesn't know how to do anything for himself anymore. And to the point where it's hilarious. I have a scene where we go to the pharmacy and he picking up a prescription under an alias. And I'm like, what's your alias? And he's like, Channing Tatum. And I'm like, you can't have an alias of someone that's more famous than you are. Like, that defeats the purpose. He's like, Channing Tatum's a person. I thought I made it up. It's such a silly name. Which is like, and when he read it, he was like, Channing Tatum's a person.
That's great. I don't know. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It's fun, and we love working together, and I would love to see him not have to tour so much, but like, unfortunately, the timing can be crucial.
Why does he have to tour? He still has expenses, you mean? Is that why he has to tour? Or he just likes...
Yeah, well...
at 79, does he have to still tour?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the alimony from the last one cost him, and wives, are expensive, apparently.
Gosh. Santa Barbara's expensive.
Yeah, that's
true.
He
lives in London now, which is way worse. Yeah. Now I think he's moving to Nevis.
Where's Nevis?
He has these
island in
I thought it was like Narnia, basically. It's actually easier to get to Easter Island. I was like, did you have to pick the most remote place in the world? But
why is he moving there?
I think
tax laws.
So we can.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't want to say it, but that's probably why. But he tried to do that once before, and it was such an epic disaster that I was like, really, we're going to do this again? Last time it was Monaco, and I was like, you're not going to like it there. And he's like, no, it'll be great. And it lasted like 3 weeks. I don't know. It was not good. But also, I'm like, why bother at 79? I mean, how many years are you going to... I don't mean he's gonna die. Like he'll always work, but like he's not gonna be. I don't know. I feel like you should have made that choice at 40 if you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm sure he loves that speech.
Well,
right?
And it's so expensive to make those moves because all the lawyers and like getting out of tax systems.
Shell companies don't come cheap.
Yeah, I mean maybe that's why Trump's in so much debt. Who knows? Like, it's just it seems silly to me, but I can't ever. Like, once his mind is made up, it's
sure
you can't argue. He's always right. He's a celebrity,
So he and his current wife
he's right more than most celebrities.
He actually is, though. He's very grounded, like, compared to most of his generation, for sure. But there's definitely like a, when you're surrounded by sycophants, how can you not change a little bit?
I know. God, I would love that to J. Elvis. I'd love to be surrounded by sycophants.
I would, totally. Yeah. It would be so good for my self-esteem.
Yeah, bring it on.
That Mystery Science Theater fame was perfect because you were only famous in that building.
Right.
And so you got that taste of it.
I loved it.
Well, thank you.
I didn't realize that you were the voice till after we got on the radio, so I couldn't get excited.
There's really no need. You don't have to. You don't have to backfill your excitement at this point. But you get that taste of it. I wouldn't want it every day. I wouldn't want
it's hard.
I wouldn't want the eyes on me all the time. But
it's exhausting, and especially with social media, it's totally changed everything. Like,
probably matters. Yeah,
I think the invasion of privacy now that everyone has a phone with, a camera on their phone. Right. Like, it used to be. Not many people had a camera with them, so he wasn't having to take pictures. But now everyone wants a selfie, and he'll politely decline. And then they'll the second he's not paying.
Everyone's faking like they're not taking a picture.
Yeah, and I always catch people. They never know that I'm with them at the airport because I walk either a few paces ahead or behind, like almost like security. And I will go and like knock phones out of people. I get so angry. I'm like, he's not a zoo animal. Don't do that. But it's so unfair. Like it's I know he chose that life, but like he didn't anticipate. I mean, Jesus, they didn't even have like telephones, I don't think, when he was born. Did they? No, they did. But he's pretty old.
But there were two piecers.
I think it's so nice that you get along so well with him. That's really cool.
We do. Maybe not after this podcast, but luckily he doesn't know how to listen to podcasts.
How can people stay posted on you if they want to come see you perform live or something? Do you have a website or?
Don't go to my website because someone built it for me in 2015 and I don't know how to log in and change anything. So I'm glad you said that. But social media is just. Everything is my name because I'm the only
at Camilla Cleese.
Same on Instagram, Facebook.
Oh, by the way, it's Cleese, not Cleese.
It's Cleese because do you know why?
I know why.
Josh,
because the real name is Cheese.
Yeah, and they changed it. Thank fucking God.
Seriously?
Because I wasn't bullied enough in junior high. Camzilla, I was a foot taller than everyone.
Oh yeah, because you have to see. Camilla's very tall.
Yeah.
6'1", as she says. So.
Yeah.
But perfectly proportioned, nonetheless.
But Camzilla Cheese would have been even worse. So,
So it's Cleese.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also, if you think about it, I mean, that's how you'd pronounce any word that's spelled like that.
Right.
I guess there isn't
Except
another
Reese's
one. But like
peanut butter
Cleese.
cups.
It's not like fleece
But
with a C.
Reese has a C in it, doesn't it?
Reese's, yes. Reese.
I thought R-E-E-S.
C.
Oh, I think it's a C.
I don't know.
R-E-C?
Let's ask the writer.
No,
Can someone look it up?
The peanut butter cup is R-E-E. Ask the fat guy. R-E-E-S-E-S, I believe.
That's what I said.
Yeah, I know. No,
Oh, it is?
I'm back on board.
How about Reese Witherspoon?
That's an S.
Right. I'm just saying that that's an S. It's not a
Oh, it is?
Reese Witherspoon.
Okay.
Yeah, but
All right.
Americans
Well,
mispronounce a lot of words.
That's for
way
sure.
to go, Mark.
I won this one, huh, buddy? I won this one.
Did you look it up? It is our S. Ugh.
Yeah, that's all
It's
right.
all right. I'm used to being wrong with my dad around. So.
I like knowing now that it's Cleese. I feel like I should have known that, and I'm sorry, but now I know it, and I'll never make that error again.
Oh, it's fine. I mean, I respond to any version of my name. Like I get introduced on a regular basis as Camilla, Camille, Carmela.
Camilla is not a. That's not a common name, though. Your first name is not a
In
common
England,
name.
it's fairly common.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Camilla Parker Bowles came along shortly after I came
Well,
along.
as a guy named Weinstein, I'm not that sympathetic.
Yeah.
Josh has a worse deal. That's true.
Well, hopefully it's not genetic.
Jay Elvis's album. You got to pick it up. He's got a comedy album, and you can get it on where?
It's called Chunks, and it's pre-sale now, out the 12th, and you can get it. You can pre-sale it at Amazon, Google, and iTunes, and it'll be streaming and everything on the 12th.
Very exciting. And
Awesome.
Check out Camilla on her many platforms, many stages that she appears. You can find her on social media, as she says.
At Camilla Cleese, if you can spell it. Which not many
now you
people
can pronounce it at least.
Yeah.
Now you can pronounce it. It's really cool meeting you. I was excited.
Yeah, thanks
Didn't
for
really know what
having
to
me.
expect, and it was really great. I mean, I love that you're so connected to your dad, and you don't have any problem talking. You don't resent talking about him and all that. And then and then you have had your.
I love getting chances to make fun of him. Are you kidding? It's all the repressed childhood anger.
And
I actually saw a more fanboy side of myself than I almost ever see when I'm revealing all that I know about you.
But you played it off very well. I wouldn't have guessed that you were, but you knew more about it than I did.
I just consider him a much more talented peer. So.
I don't. No, I'm kidding.
But thank you, Camilla.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Bye, Josh.
Bye.
Thanks to Camilla Cleese. It was so much fun calling her Cleese through the entire interview and then not finding out until the end that it's Cleese. As I always do, thank you for all the ways you show us love. The email is edgewithmarkthompson@gmail.com. And until next time, bye-bye.
I want to thank you for supporting Mark Thompson here on the Edge Radio. Fantastic show with all the jokes and J. Elvis, and all the commentary and the politics and the bullshit. I love it. Edge-show.com. Stupid. Why is there a dash? Edge-show.com.
Get more of The Edge on Stitcher and iTunes, or go to our website, edge-show.com.